Hi everyone, Mac Pierre-Louis here, mediator and co-founder of vincentmediations.com. And today I'm here with my colleague, Natalia.
Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate and mediator from Warsaw, Poland. And we have a pleasure to interview today.
Yes, Jeff Aresty. And we're spending a few minutes with Jeff, and he is the founder and president and CEO of the internetbar.org, so the IBO. And Jeff, let's get started. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, it's great to be here with both of you. Thanks for inviting me in. I will start with that I started practicing in 1976, and my dad was in the shoe business, so I was an international business lawyer from day one, since he had shoe factories all over the globe. And that gave me an international perspective right at the outset. And also as a tax lawyer, I was uniquely in the position of working inside one of the big 8 accounting firms at the time, which have since become the big 4. And in 1979, all of a sudden, hundreds upon hundreds of boxes started arriving at the accounting firm with personal computers in them. And that was the first time that I had seen these personal computers, but so many arriving at once was really a shock. And I learned about the electronic spreadsheet, which made the accountants and the tax accountants so excited, because now they could just press the recalc button and they saved themselves hours upon hours of recalculation. And in my mind, that was when I started thinking about technology and the law and the legal profession. So in the next few years, I became very active in the Massachusetts Bar Association. Much to my surprise, I was like one of the only lawyers interested in computers. And so since the bar needed somebody to do this, I got appointed to the executive committee, and I was only 5 years out. So I got very lucky and rose to the top of the bar very fast as a result, working with the presidents of the bar. I created this program called the Computer College, and we were training lawyers all across Massachusetts with grants on how to automate your fill in the blank, estate planning practice, real estate practice, litigation practice, and so forth. Shortly after that, the computer division, the American Bar Association, pulled me into their midst, and I was one of the founders of the American Bar Association's tech show. All of this as I'm continuing just a regular international business practice, estate planning, real estate. So it was a pretty normal small firm practice after I left the accounting firm and partnered up with a handful of lawyers. But I was really enjoying, more than anything else, the automation side of things. But by the late 80s, it was becoming pretty clear that the legal profession was going to use computers for document assembly, legal research, and not much more. That was pretty much the focus. So I got interested in international law from the standpoint of banking. Got a master's of law in banking, international banking in particular, working with folks from all around the world. And then when the internet came about, I started thinking about, don't we really need harmonized laws like the banking laws are for all of the e-commerce that was about to develop? And lo and behold, there was really no effort that was going to be made consistently in that area. The first really interesting area that I focused on was digital signatures, which ended up being this major battle that occurred all around the world. And finally, industry was the one that took it over. And after 10 years of our digital signatures, the same thing as a written signature, it was industry that finally said, we're going to make it work that way. And there's still hundreds of laws all around the world dealing with the question of, are digital signatures valid? So e-commerce was just a pipe dream as far as I could see, getting harmonized rules of law in that place. But I was still practicing law as a small firm practitioner and still advising clients. And then By the time 2005 came around, I had reached the end of my rope when it came to harmonized rules and set out to form the Internet Bar with many of my contacts from the American Bar Association, who saw things my way, but really didn't want to put the effort in to getting harmonized rules. And so we've been building the Internet Bar now for the last 15 years with projects all over the world, working with musicians in disadvantaged countries, working with victims of repression all over the globe, and trying to use technology to give them opportunities to empower themselves. So that's a little bit of my background.
Well, thank you. So what is your experience in online dispute resolution, or also known as ODR, and mediation in particular, and mediation and training?
Well, when it was 1999, the American Bar Association ran a major conference on e-lawyering. And that was because of a whole group of us in the law practice management section of the American Bar Association were tabbed. They knew we knew what we were talking about, and so they gathered people from all over the country for several days. And what we were tasked to do was to look at the issues that technology would raise up in the practice of law, and what were the obstacles, including ethical obstacles, competencies, and so on and so forth. And I was selected to be the reporter of that conference. So for 3 days, I was sitting there with a computer and with a yellow pad. Between the computer and the yellow pad, I was filling up page after page after page. And at one of the breaks in the conference, one of the founders of the field of online dispute resolution, Ethan Catch, was sitting a couple seats over from me, came over, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're writing a lot. What are you writing so much about?" So I answered the question, and then I said, "Why are you here?" And he said, "Well, I'm part of this field called online dispute resolution." And at that point, he was one of the people that was doing the first eBay consult that helped eBay build their resolution center. So it was sort of right place at the right time. I happened to be finishing a book for the American Bar Association on international business negotiations, which was a multi-author book, and I was, one of the two editors of it. The other editor was the soon-to-be president of the American Bar Association and the immediate past chair of the international law section, Jim Silkenet. And when he told me what online dispute resolution was, I was in shock that I didn't know anything about it. I negotiate. That's what I do. I'm a business lawyer. So to me, negotiation and mediation are pretty much about the same thing. It's just a different phase of the relationship. One, you're trying to get people together, and the other, you're trying to keep people together. But the bottom line is people and together. It's just where you catch them. And so to me, the technology that they were using in online dispute resolution was something that the legal profession hadn't really seen. So I jumped over to his world real fast after that meeting. And I started meeting all the people that he was gathering. And I learned a lot about the field of ODR, online dispute resolution. And what Ethan had done was assemble academics and technologists from all over the world who would meet year in and year out, face-to-face and online. The online portion was called Cyber Week, and the face-to-face was just a few-day gathering wherever in the world. And so we all became fast friends, and we learned from each other. And these are really bright academics. They're the leading teachers in mediation and arbitration in their schools and in their law schools. And technology was something that they brought forth. But I can only tell you that the story that was told again and again for about the first decade of online dispute resolution was how eBay solved 60 million disputes a year without going to court. And that story was repeated probably 1,000 times again and again and again, because any number of us who were trying to institute systems of online dispute resolution in courts for small claims would constantly run up against groups that didn't want it to happen, for whatever the reason. So the early version of ODR was generally focused on resolving cases with small amounts of controversy. Little did I know that in Australia and a couple of other places, there were a group of people using online dispute resolution in the family law area. I didn't know anything about it, and I found out about it many, many years later. Even though we were all together, I was focusing on the business side. I wasn't ever really focused on the family side. But there it was. And what became clear in these other areas where people were remote from each other because that's the way their country was built, or that's the way the country was, and that's where the people were located, that there was more reason for people to use online than in the places where you had small claims and people could actually get to the court. So ODR in that first decade was all about that, and with little uptick on the adoption other than in your online auction marketplaces or your online marketplaces. And then somewhere, oh geez, this would be probably getting on to the 2009, 2010 period, some of the academics got real serious, tried to push and convene sessions through UNCITRAL. So at the UN level, there was an attempt to create best practices in the field of online dispute resolution. It was a 6-7 year process, of which the first 2 or 3 years, people were just fighting over what's the scope of what we're going to talk about. So, you know, the irony of mediators fighting with each other over what the scope is about is sort of odd in and of itself. But in the end, nothing was agreed to other than a set of principles that were announced at the end. So online dispute resolution has been around. I think those of us in the field know it as ODR, but not too many other people know it as ODR.
So sticking to this topic of online dispute resolution, what differences do you see between in-person mediations and online mediations?
I'd like to look at it this way. I believe, you know, you have to look at technology as just a tool. And so you could conceivably say that in 1985, if I was resolving an issue between two parties with each other and we were using the telephone because one person is in one state and another person is another, that's online mediation. It's not using this, but it's using some kind of technology. And it's different because you're on the phone as opposed to you're face-to-face in a room. So I like to think that if you look at the online tools as a way to be used when it is appropriate to use them, that's the best way to use an online tool. So mediation is mediation. But you need to understand the differences when you move into an online setting that aren't the same. You know, people in the online setting do not necessarily feel comfortable with it. Some people are very comfortable with the online setting. Other people need to be in a room physically. So you really have to pay attention to the comfort level of the people that you're dealing with, and on all sides, not just if you're a mediator, of course, you're in the middle and you don't have a client, you're representing the opportunity for people to have an active listener to help them communicate with each other. But you want to be aware that if it's an online setting, that one person may be better at using the technology than another. But in a face-to-face setting, one person might be more powerful than the other because of their relationship with each other. So you're still dealing with imbalances that as a mediator you have to be aware of. It's just in an online world, those imbalances might play out differently. And then, of course, in an online setting, you need to know the competencies. Yes?
Okay, so what do you think? What skills should the online mediator possess?
Well, at the start, they should certainly be trained and certified in whatever locality, program, subject matter area competencies that you have. That's where we are in the world today. Whether it's court-based or whether it's just a best practice environment. If you're a family law or elder care mediator, or you're a mediator in a complex labor management negotiation or in real estate transactions, you should have substantive training from a mediator trainer in those settings at the base level, regardless of whether or not you are going to do this face-to-face or online. I believe that the online training comes on top of that. And what you're learning there is the different tools of the technology, and those, what advantages that certain technological trainings bring. Of course, the biggest one is geography, but that is just the way that the technology works. But you need to understand confidentiality issues. You need to understand how to move people from room to room. You need to understand whether or not the mic is on in a private room or a public room. You need to understand all these little nuances that could make a difference in the mediator's outcome. So the training in online is to get you past that, past that hump. And depending upon who you are, some people feel that that is only just an add-on to the basic mediator training. You just need another few hours of training in how to use the technology, and that's enough. And and you're there. And other people feel that no, there's more to it than that. There are opportunities in the online world to do much more with mediation, and there are more ways to get to yes. And that world is just beginning, and a lot of people are moving into that space. But I still think you need that underpinning of the basic mediator training, no matter what.
Okay, so what is IBO then?
Well, Internet Bar was formed in 2005 because there is no group in the world that is addressing the global nature of the internet. We live in an emerging global society, and right now it's about half the world that is online in one way or another. And honestly, most people are beginning to move to mobile as part of their online experience. So even the computer this way is becoming yesterday's tool, as mobile becomes the go-to place for interaction. So Internet Bar knew this and could see this coming, and saw nobody making a best practice framework where all the cultures are meeting together. We need to be operating consistently with each other. We need to set standards. We need to have best practices when law and technology meet. And that's just with respect to the capacity of the intermediaries like ourselves in interacting with people. But what about people who want to interact with each other around the globe? And my background as a private international lawyer made that simple. It's no different than click I accept to eBay's terms of service. There are 100 million people in one contract, 200 million people in one contract, or across borders. That's our agreement. It's a private contract. And as long as it's a legal contract in each of the countries where people click I accept, then we can take that model and apply it for family law. We can apply it for real estate law. We can apply it for any area of law. But there was no bar association. There was no legislature anywhere attempting to do that. And my experience in the United Nations with regard to trying to get to best practices just in the field of online dispute resolution demonstrated to me that we needed another way to get to yes. So we started that work in 2005, and we have been building global legal frameworks for best practices in the dispute resolution field, and then we've gone into the substantive area of fair trade music so that we could actually connect musicians with each other around the globe, and they could work directly with the consumers and resolve disputes directly with each other as a model for other areas to move into. So that's how we started, and we said, we'll put the stamp on it. Since nobody else is, we can declare ourselves as the regulatory body in this space.
So what do you think? Is there a need to certify online mediators? If yes, why?
Well, this is about trust. If there's one thing that's missing in the world today, it's trust. Trust in institutions, trust in each other. It's really gone downhill in the last several years. And now the internet has moved to a stage where you can't even trust the information that's coming to you. So you need to, the society needs a foundation of trust in order to move forward and interact with each other. And if people who are mediators, whether they're lawyers or whether they're trained as mediators and have a justice background, are considered trustworthy people who want to get to the truth and want to help people to resolve their differences, there should be some commonality in how they're trained and how they work so that society can trust that it can put the problems that they're facing into the hands of mediators who've been trained this way to help them get to yes. Without that, it's like if you were in a plane and you were landing in another country that you didn't know about, and you were landing on the runway in that country and there was no international standard, how do you know whether or not you're going to be safe when you land? There are international standards in all other aspects of industry. There should also be international standards in the field of resolving disputes and then getting to yes.
Thank you so much. That's been pretty interesting, all of it.
Yes, well, absolutely. I like what you ended with about the idea of us having a trust deficit across the internet in the space of online dispute resolution. And so we look forward to talking to you more about that in the future. And we thank you for the work that you've already been doing in this area for the last few decades.
Well, appreciate the nice remarks. I enjoy the work that we're starting together with you and look forward to more.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff. We're signing out.
Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Take care.